In the heart of South America lies a nation that once sat on a fortune so vast it is almost unimaginable. This isn't a story about ancient gold or a mythical city of El Dorado. This is the real story of Venezuela, a country whose state-owned oil company, PDVSA, was once worth $1 trillion. How did a nation with the largest proven oil reserves on the planet, a veritable oil empire, spiral into one of the most catastrophic economic collapses in modern history? What happened to that trillion-dollar treasure? The answer is a shocking tale of ambition, power, and devastating consequences. Let's rewind to the 1970s. The world is thirsty for oil, and Venezuela is the fountain. Petrodollars flood the country, financing gleaming skyscrapers, sprawling highways, and generous social programs. The nation became a symbol of Latin American prosperity. Its capital, Caracas, was a bustling metropolis, a playground for the rich, and a beacon of modernity. The state oil company, PDVSA, was the crown jewel, a powerhouse in the global energy market, respected for its technical expertise and efficiency. It wasn't just an oil company, it was the engine of a nation's dream. For a time, it seemed the wealth would never end. Venezuela was on top of the world, its future as bright as the Caribbean sun. But beneath the surface of this glittering prosperity, the seeds of its own destruction were being sown. The country's economy was dangerously dependent on one single commodity, oil. When oil prices were high, the nation thrived. But when they fell, the entire system trembled. This is the classic resource curse, where immense natural wealth paradoxically leads to poor economic outcomes. Instead of diversifying its economy, Venezuela doubled down on oil. The government used the oil revenue to fund everything, creating a society that relied on state handouts rather than sustainable growth. This dependency created a fragile house of cards, beautiful and impressive, but ready to topple with the slightest gust of wind. And that wind was about to become a hurricane. The turning point came at the end of the 20th century. Hugo Chavez, a charismatic populist leader, rose to power, promising to use the country's oil wealth to fight poverty and inequality. He launched the Bolivarian Revolution, nationalizing key industries and dramatically expanding social spending. Initially, soaring oil prices in the early 2000s fueled his project. He poured billions into programs for housing, healthcare, and education. For many impoverished Venezuelans, it felt like a new dawn. He was seen as a hero, finally giving the country's wealth back to the people. But this grand vision came at a tremendous cost. The government began to exert more and more control over PDVSA, the once mighty oil empire. Experienced engineers and managers were replaced with political loyalists. The company that was once a model of efficiency became a tool for political patronage. Its profits were no longer reinvested into maintaining and upgrading its infrastructure, but were siphoned off to fund social programs and political agendas. The golden goose was being starved. Production began to falter. The complex machinery of the oil industry, from rigs to refineries, started to decay from a lack of investment and expertise. The trillion-dollar valuation began to seem like a distant memory. This was the beginning of the end for the oil giant, and for Venezuela's economy. Then came the perfect storm. Around 2014, global oil prices crashed. For a country that relied on oil for 95% of its export revenue, this was a death blow. The government's income evaporated overnight. The social programs, once funded by a torrent of petrodollars, were now unsustainable. The house of cards collapsed. This wasn't just a recession. It was an economic freefall of historic proportions. The government's response made a bad situation infinitely worse. Instead of implementing sound economic reforms, they resorted to printing money. Massive, unimaginable amounts of it. This led to one of the most extreme cases of hyperinflation in world history. The currency, the bolivar, became virtually worthless. Prices would double every few days, sometimes even hours. A lifetime of savings could be wiped out in a week. People needed wheelbarrows full of cash just to buy a loaf of bread. The economy ground to a halt. Shelves in supermarkets became barren. Basic necessities like food, medicine, and toilet paper vanished. This was the brutal reality of hyperinflation and scarcity. The gleaming cities of the past now saw endless queues of people hoping for a ration of food. The dream had turned into a relentless, daily nightmare. The story of Venezuela's economic collapse is a textbook case of failed policies and corruption. The nationalization of private businesses destroyed the productive capacity of the country. Price controls, meant to make goods affordable, instead created massive shortages and a thriving black market. And throughout this all, rampant corruption siphoned away what little wealth remained. Billions of dollars simply disappeared into the pockets of a select few, while the rest of the population starved. The very leaders who promised to end inequality presided over a system that created a new, politically connected elite, while plunging millions into desperate poverty. It's a tragic irony. A revolution meant to help the poor ended up creating one of the worst humanitarian crises in the Western Hemisphere. Behind all the staggering statistics and economic charts is the human cost behind the numbers. It's the story of millions of people whose lives were shattered. Families were torn apart as over 7 million Venezuelans fled their homeland, creating the largest refugee crisis in recent Latin American history. They left behind their homes, their careers, and everything they knew, seeking a chance at survival in neighboring countries. It's the story of doctors who couldn't treat patients because hospitals had no medicine. It's the story of children suffering from malnutrition in a land that sits atop a sea of oil. The loss of that trillion-dollar fortune wasn't just an economic event. It was a human catastrophe that destroyed a generation and left deep, lasting scars on the soul of a nation. From a trillion-dollar powerhouse to a landscape of economic ruin, the journey of Venezuela serves as a chilling warning to the world. It shows how quickly a nation's wealth can be squandered, how good intentions can pave a road to disaster, and how devastating the combination of resource dependency, failed policies, and corruption can be. The oil is still there, buried deep beneath the ground, but the dream it once promised is broken. Rebuilding from this collapse will take generations, and a fundamental change in how the country is governed. The hidden wealth remains, but unlocking it again will require more than just a key. It will require trust, stability, and a painful reckoning with the past. What part of Venezuela's story surprised you the most? Was it the sheer scale of the wealth, or the speed of its collapse? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want more deep dives into the stories that shape our world, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching.